This conference will now be recorded.
Well, that's my cue. Welcome, everyone, to the planning meeting for the Township of Southgate and Grey County. We have a number of people here today, and I'm Barbara DeBreen. I'm a councillor, and I will call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. This is a public meeting concerning proposed zoning bylaw amendments pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act, files C11-22 and OPA 1-22, and application C9-22. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the clerk, Lindsay Green. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Southgate before the zoning bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Council of the Township of Southgate to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and in addition, they may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, in the opinion of the board. There are reasonable grounds to do so. The first zoning bylaw amendment is file number C11-22 and OPA, and my screen just, and OPA 1-22. It is for H-By Construction Limited. The location of the subject land, and that is the wrong file. My apologies. Just to clarify, because I haven't chaired a joint meeting, do I read the information off of the Grey County, or do I follow my script in this regard?
I would read it off the notice, Councillor DeBreen.
Thank you.
That's
all right.
Yeah,
the location is site part lot 31, concession 3 in the Township of Southgate, County of Grey. And looking for. The applicant is proposing to establish a licensed aggregate extraction operation on the subject property. The Hog's Back pit would be a Class A pit with a proposed annual tonnage of 100,000 tons. The applicant proposes to license 13.38 hectares, of which 5.77 hectares is slated for extraction. To permit this use, three applications under the Planning Act are required, including an amendment to the county's official plan, OPA 42-07-090-OPA-16, an amendment to the township's official plan, OPA 1-22, an amendment to the township zoning bylaw, C11-22. The county would make a decision regarding the county official plan amendment, while the township would make a decision regarding the township OPA and zoning bylaw amendment. The proposed gravel pit also requires a license under the Aggregate Resources Act from the Ministry of Northern Development, Mines, Natural Resources and Forestry. The license application is not being considered as part of this public meeting. Any person or public body, did I read that already? Yes, I did. Okay, may I please have confirmation from the clerk or from our county representative that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Becky since the county sent notice.
Okay,
yes, I can confirm. Just looking at for the date of this notice here. Let me confirm, yes. So a notice dated June 28th was circulated to all neighbors within 120 meters of the property, except for neighbors that were part of our county mailing list for registered agencies. So in this case, a number of the surrounding properties were owned by conservation authorities, and so we circulated to them via our standard email process. And yes, all the agencies were given notice that this meeting was happening today, and were given that period to respond. All of the information was also uploaded to the county's website, I believe to the township's website as well, for all the application documents. And
Yes.
a notice was posted on the property as well.
Thank you very much, Becky. I will now ask for our planner, Clinton Stredwick, to review correspondence received from commenting agencies and or his counterpart at the county, whomever is going to take that on.
Thank you, Chair Dobreen. I can read the comments that I have received to date. Certainly, Becky has shared what she has, and if she's received additional ones that I haven't mentioned or that maybe I missed in my pulling them off of the the screen here, she can chime in at that time. But I'll start here. The first set of comments that I have are from the Enbridge comments. Enbridge has no objections to the Hogsback application. Who's this one from? This is from MPAC. MPAC has no comments. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation indicated that, where is it here? Here it is. They say, please have the proponent reach out to initiate consultation, as close consultation with SON is required for any aggregate operations in the territory. Due to the extremely high volume of proposed development in the territory of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, we have a few strict protocols to keep the process moving, and then they list those protocols, and we have referred this to the applicant's agent for them to contact SON directly. The next set of comments are from Public Works, the Township Public Works, and they indicate that Southgate is going to request a haul route agreement for haul route improvements for the current surface treatment road surface from the pit to Gray Road 8. And depending on timelines, the options will be discussed in the haul route agreement. The Grand River Conservation Authority are recommending deferral of the application to allow the applicant an opportunity to address the comments and concerns received below. Specifically, GRCA has reviewed the application as per their delegated authority. It's understood that surface drainage from the operation areas will be infiltrated into the pit floor, and that no surface runoff is proposed to be directed toward the adjacent wetlands. To help determine an appropriate extraction setback from the wetlands, a clear understanding of local catchments and seasonal wetland water balance is required to determine the extent of which the adjacent wetlands are currently sustained by direct precipitation, groundwater, and or surface water. A monthly water balance should also account for any surface runoff. So the Natural Environment Technical Report does not provide a clear rationale to support the proposed 15 to 30 meter extraction setbacks. There's some advisory comments in there as well. The GRCA owns property immediately east and west of the subject property. It has been noted that the portion of the extraction area will be within 15 meters of the GRCA owned lands immediately east of the proposed licensed area and proposed storage within 30 meters of the proposed boundary. Any comments relating to GRCA property would be issued under separate cover. And then it says additional wetland piezometers are recommended to assess water levels within the large wetland areas as extraction occurs. So there's that. And then the SVCA. Indicate that because it's a joint process where part of the lands are within the SVCA and part are in the GRCA. The applications are generally acceptable to the SVCA staff, provided upon peer review, the hydrogeological assessment report is determined to be acceptable to the SVCA. And then the last comments we have are actually, it's the County of Grey committee report or merit report prepared by Becky, recommending proposed county official plan amendment be received for information and that the proposal proceeds to a public meeting to consider the amendment. So they reserve judgment on it, but are confident enough that it could at least proceed to a public meeting at this stage. And that is all of the comments I have in my file, unless I missed something, Becky. That's all I have.
Thanks so much, Clint, for that overview. And I think that was a really great summary. The only last one that I forwarded you just this morning was essentially just that our the county's transportation services department had reviewed the application and they didn't have any comments or concerns at this time.
Thank you. Were there any comments received from members of the public to either Clinton or Becky?
No, to my knowledge, none were sent to the county.
Are there any questions from council at this time? I believe Genevieve may have a presentation that had been indicated by Linda. Oh, there's Lindsay, got her hand up. Lindsay, our clerk.
I
Lindsay Green.
wonder, Chair Dobreen, if everyone's okay, if maybe Jen could go ahead, and then I'm sure that may spark some questions or could answer some as well.
I agree. That was my thought. If members of council are okay with that, we'll just turn the floor over to Genevieve Scott from Cuesta Planning. Hello, Genevieve.
Hello, Councillor Dobreen. Thank you very much, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? I always want to make sure.
Yes, we can hear you very well. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I think everyone does by now, but I am Genevieve Scott from Cuesta Planning. And we've been retained by HBI Construction to assist them in processing the applications under both the Aggregate Resources Act as well as the Planning Act to permit a new gravel pit operation at the subject lands. Just to provide a bit of background here, so the site's situated on a 41 hectare parcel in a fairly rural area of the township, and it's near the border of Grey and Wellington counties. The esker, or as it's colloquially known, the Hog's Back, is in the north and central section of the site, and it really is the dominant physical feature on the parcel. It extends across the site in a north-south direction, and it has a flat crest with quite steep side slopes. The elevation of the esker is about 496 meters above sea level in the north and 503 meters above sea level in the center of the site. 65 meters wide in the north, and it widens as it goes south to about 120 meters in width. Other than that, the remainder of the parcel is quite flat. There's some wooded wetlands located to the east and west. In the southwest corner of the parcel, there's a small portion of land that's been cropped. And there, historically on the site, there was a former wayside pit that was located on the esker itself in the southern portion of the site. Surrounding land uses, east, west, and south are pretty undeveloped. They're covered in mostly low-lying woodland and wetland. And to the east and west, these are Conservation Authority or managed lands. North of the site is our pasture lands. There's no residence or agricultural outbuildings, but it is agriculturally used. And then southeast of the site is a below water gravel extraction operation, which is owned by the town of the Grand Valley. The closest house is about 700 meters to the east of the site. So with respect to the operations, it will be a Class A pit with a proposed annual tonnage of 100,000 tons. The licensed area is going to be 13.38 hectares, and 5.77 hectares of that is slated for extraction. Extraction is going to be above the groundwater table, and it's required to be 1.5 meters above that maximum predicted groundwater table. So depth of extraction from the top of the deposit will range from 6 meters to a maximum of 11 meters across the site. It's intended to proceed south to north on the site with the haul route, the internal haul route extending along the bottom or the floor of the pit. Operations themselves will take place Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 6. There's not going to be any operations on the weekends or public holidays. There will be some processing on the site, and it will generally follow extraction and be relocated as throughout the lifespan of the pit as it proceeds northward. And stockpiling will stay within the first phase of the operation. With respect to the setback of the operation, it's about 120 meters from the road. The rehabilitation of the site will be progressive and closely follow each phase of the extraction. In the slopes at the north and south end of extraction, we will be rehabilitated as limits of extraction are reached, with the final perimeter slopes being graded a 3-to-1 slope, topsoiled and seeded for stabilization. Overburden and topsoil will be spread on the pit floor, and then there will be reforestation in the following spring season for each phase. The southern portion of the site will be rehabilitated to a natural state for the purposes of a passive recreational after use. It's the intention currently to have the internal haul route remain unrehabilitated, so for future access purposes. And the northern portion of the site is to be reforested to create a wildlife corridor between the east and west provincially significant wetlands. And this area will be approximately 200 meters deep from the northern property line. The areas to be reforested will be planted with native flora, and the project biologist has also incorporated a number of species that are traditional First Nations flora as well. In terms of monitoring the rehabilitation program, vegetation will be monitored for a minimum of 2 growing seasons following the plantings and replaced if needed. So at the end, ultimately, there will be a net gain of biodiversity at the site. There'll be almost another hectare of planting in addition to the 5.77 hectares that will be extracted. The main haul route for the proposal will be east on Southgate Road 4 to Grey Road 8, and then south to Provincial Highway 89. And it's intended to use triaxle single unit trucks, which typically haul about 40 tons per load. As part of our pre-submission discussions with township staff, it was confirmed that traffic impact study would be required, and any recommendations stemming from that study implemented through a haul route agreement. And it was Paradigm Transportation Solutions that was retained by HBI Construction to complete the study. So they took a look at current traffic and site conditions, as well as provided estimates for background traffic growth, and as well as the additional traffic that would be generated by the new pit use. The study assumed 240 operating days per year and an 11-hour working day. So the study forecasted about 12 inbound and 12 outbound truck trips during peak AM and PM times. Under current and forecasted conditions, which was up to 2027, the intersections are predicted to operate within acceptable levels of service. And the study also determined that no off-site transportation improvements would be required as part of the proposal. So with respect to land use considerations, both pieces of legislation, the Aggregate Resources Act as well as the Planning Act, include matters of provincial interest that are required to be considered when reviewing license applications. These interests are reflected in the provincial standards under the Aggregate Resource Act, the provincial policy statement, and then subsequently within official plan policy. So the first provincial interest that we looked at was with respect to mineral resources. And the provincial policy statement indicates that mineral resources are to be identified and protected for long-term use. So with respect to the on-site resource, the Aggregate Resources Inventory Paper 51, I'll just call it ARIP 51 for short, has identified this esker, which is known as the Keldon esker, as a selected sand and gravel resource of primary significance in the township. And you can see this by the current and past extraction that's within the general vicinity of this deposit as well. At the time of writing the report, there was the township had not yet been amalgamated, but it was the report notes that these two eskers contain virtually all of Proton Township's possible resources for crushable aggregate. So it's quite a significant local mineral resource. And this has been reflected by the upper and lower tier official plans, as both the County of Grey and Southgate have designated the site as either partially or fully within an aggregate resources area. As part of the hydro-G assessment, there were boreholes advanced on the site, and each of the boreholes also encountered sand and gravel. So the sampling also confirmed that there's a high quality resource here. Under the PPS, and particularly under the, as part of the Aggregate Resource Act process, we are required to review agrarian resources on potential extraction sites as well. And in this case, there's a mixed land inventory classification. So the area that I had mentioned has historically been cropped. That does contain some Class 1 soils, and this portion of the site will remain outside of the area of extraction, and so it could potentially be just remain under cultivation for the long term. The wetlands have been classified as organic, and the esker itself has a soil classification of 6TS and 4FM, and these relate primarily to the steep topography that you would see with this hog's back, and also a low natural moisture or fertility. Usually if you see a 4FM soil, that means the soils are quite gravelly in nature. So there really are no agricultural resources that are going to be impacted at this site. The next item that we took a look at were natural heritage resources. And both the PPS as well as the provincial standards do require that an application conduct a natural environmental technical report to determine if any of the 7 natural heritage features identified by the province are on or within 120 meters of a site that's to be licensed. So a natural environment technical report was prepared by SAR Environmental as part of this application. SAR conducted field work through the spring, summer, autumn, and winter of 2020 and had 2 follow-up site inspections in the fall of 2021 as well. As part of this process, SAR did conduct a review of the extent of the PSWs at the site, which resulted in a few refinements of the boundaries of that PSW, and this refinement has been noted on the Aggregate Resource Act site plans. Some areas were reduced and some areas were enlarged depending on what she found on the site. So the Natural Heritage Review confirmed that there were wetlands on the site, significant woodlands, some wildlife habitat. Primarily there was a northern ribbon snake and some interior breeding birds, and of course a area of natural and scientific interest, an earth ansi, that being the Keldon esker itself. The Natural Heritage Review concluded that an extraction of a portion of the esker can occur without negative impact, provided certain recommended setbacks and mitigation are implemented at the site and maintained during the lifespan of the pit. SAR also recommended some biannual monitoring for interior forest breeding birds, as well as some of the wetland vegetation. With respect to the esker itself, GSS Engineering provided a memo to MNRF as part of the background review, trying to find out the rationale for designating this particular portion of the esker as within a provincially significant ANSI, in consideration of the value of it being as a mineral resource, as well as the fact that historically there's been significant extraction within this area. So the background research didn't really reveal any formal documentation or reasoning for the designation, but we did find that the best representation of the esker was actually a large portion of the ridge, which is about 1.8 kilometers southeast of the site. As we haven't received any comments back from the ministry in this regard yet. As ARIP 51 notes that the Keldon and Egerton eskers are really the only source of crushable aggregate at this location, it does represent an important local resource. So this provincial resource, the mineral resource, seems to have taken precedence over the natural heritage resource in the past. And there has been a fairly recent license in this area, and that would be the below water pit license that the town of Grand Valley applied for. We also took a look at cultural heritage resources. Scarlett Genasis was responsible for the stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessments. Her work was completed in the fall of 2019. And the site investigation determined that the area intended for extraction did not contain anything of cultural or archaeological significance. The assessments were submitted to the province, and there was a letter of acceptance received in November of 2019. With respect to water resources, there was a hydrogeological assessment completed by GSS. This assessment reviewed both the potential impacts on ground and surface water resources, and also was required to establish the maximum predicted water table at the site. So the field work for the Hydro-G began in November of 2020. They installed 4 monitoring wells, and they also installed 3 staff gauges and a piezometer as part of that analysis. And those staff gauges were to monitor surface water levels. The review confirmed that the groundwater flow is in a south to north direction, and it also established the depth of the pit floor. So the extraction is to be established maximum depth of extraction at 495 MASL in the south and 491.5 in the north end. The assessment determined that given the fact that this is an above water operation and that there are no supply wells within 500 meters of the site, groundwater resources are not expected to be impacted. And GSS took quite, took a lot of time and did a fairly thorough review with respect to hydraulic connectivity between ground and surface water at the site, and eventually determined that the proposed area of extraction is quite a minor contributor to any water supply of the adjacent wetlands. Therefore, they have determined that there's no potential for the pit to negatively affect the water levels in the PSWs. Monitoring has been recommended for the first 3 years of the of operations, and then a report completed and sent to the province. And if they've determined that monitoring does not need to be carried out any further, then monitoring would cease at that time. We also took a look, other things that we need to look at with respect to gravel pit operations, always noise and dust. In this case, given the fact that the closest residence is approximately 700 meters away, we don't anticipate noise or dust being a concern in that regard. That being said, dust is required to be controlled on site by the use of water or another provincially approved dust suppressant. The required approvals under the Planning Act process are amendments to the upper and lower tier official plans, as well as the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And a couple primary reasons that we need a county official plan amendment is that the deposit on the site is only partially identified in the county plan as being within the aggregate resources area, and part of the site has been identified as within a core area of the natural heritage system. So we do require an amendment for those two main policy reasons. And with respect to the township plan, all new operations do require an amendment to both the OP as well as the zoning bylaw. So as I noted earlier, SAR has identified and has refined, pardon me, the extent of the PSWs on the parcel, so that those refinements can be incorporated into the land use schedules at the same time as redesignating the licensed area to a mineral resource extraction use. And that's about it for my discussion right now. We are going to be holding a public information session next week that's required under the Aggregate Resources Act. That will be held at the Dundalk Arena. It will be 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. should anyone wish to come and participate in that. We will have all the reports there, as well as large-scale site plans, and some of the consultants will be there to answer questions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jen. Will this report be provided, presentation be provided and uploaded to the various sites? I'm getting a nod from our clerk, Lindsay Green. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to council since we opted to hear from Jen before. Are there any questions from council at this time before I go to the public?
I'm good. Councillor
Frew? No? Good. Are there any, I'd ask if the applicant or agent, we've already heard from Jen, is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of this application? If so, you can unmute and give your name and address for the record. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in opposition of this application? Please unmute, state your name and your address for the record. Are there any questions from council? I have a couple, and I would imagine that this is probably through the planner to Jen, perhaps just a couple to clarify. The extraction is limited to 5.77 acres. You refer to phases. And the rehabilitation would be progressive through those phases. How many phases, and is that in total 5.77 acres, or is each phase 5.77 acres? Just want to clarify that.
Sorry,
question.
I didn't catch that question.
So of the licensed area is just over 13 hectares, I believe. And the extraction area is only going to be 5.77 hectares. And I called it acres, my apologies. And there was reference in Jen's presentation that there would be progressive rehabilitation through the various phases of extraction. So as the extraction moves from phase to phase, I just wondered, is the extraction area a total of 5.77 hectares? And how many phases would there be within that 5.77 hectares? Or do we even know?
I'm going to deflect, if you will, that question to Genevieve.
That's what I thought. Deflect.
Sure. Thank you. So to answer the question with respect to total, yes, the total area for extraction is 5.77 hectares. So some of the other areas included in the licensed areas for setbacks and area to be able to move around given the sort of the unique topography of the esker. So that's why the licensed area is a little bit bigger, but yes, the total is 5.77 hectares for extraction, and there's going to be 3 phases. So what they're going to do is, as they move north, when they move out of one of the phases, they'll start rehabbing that phase that has been exhausted. And what they're going to do is the limits of extraction are going to be staked about 100 meters in advance of any topsoil stripping, and those stakes will remain in place. And then when that the resource is exhausted in that portion, they'll begin the rehab, they'll restake the next phase, and then they'll go and stake the next phase.
Okay, thank you. So there's 3 phases within the 5.77 hectares. You indicated the traffic impact study indicated there was no road improvements, no haul route improvements required. I don't see anyone from our roads department, but I'm wondering how that affects a gravel Southgate Side Road 4, that there wouldn't need to be any improvements, because wouldn't that be a load restricted road, Clinton? Or Lindsay might have an answer. Look at that. You can deflect to Lindsay.
That section is paved, Councillor Dobreen, just to note.
Oh, it is? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I can add to that a little bit.
Yes, please.
So in addition to any upgrades that may or may not be required, depending on discussions, there's also things like contributions for maintenance of the road. If shoulders or edges of the road get cracked, or because there will likely be some of that going on, that we can afford to bring someone out to repair the road. So that's what that's to look at.
And I lost audio there for a second. And I know that H by Construction has contributed to haul route improvements with lane turnings and things in the past. SCCA's letter indicated they wanted a peer review of the hydro-G summary. That's easier to say. So that would come as well. And you indicated that dust suppression on site extraction can only be provided with biannual monitoring. Is this in monitoring, and who does that? And so who is the oversight body to ensure that the conditions that are set out by the county and the township are followed? The province,
is it to the applicant?
Anybody? I don't know who. I'll let you deflect.
I'm happy to receive the deflection.
Thank you, Jen.
No problem. So with respect to the requirements that the county or the township would want in place, anything that is off-site, for example, if the township wanted maybe some dust suppression occurring, I don't know, annually or maybe twice a season or something like that, that could be something that could be considered to be put into any sort of haul route agreement. If there are specific items that the township or the county would like to see in regard to the operations itself, then those can be added as site plan notes to the operational plan or the rehabilitation plan. And that's really the best approach, because the Aggregate Resource Act site plans are tied to the license. They're registered with the license, they're a legal document, and they have to be adhered to, and it's the province who's responsible for making sure that operations are in compliance.
Awesome, thank you. That was a good answer. Thank you. And I guess one last question to you, Jen, because you mentioned the ARA public information session. I don't get the Dundalk Herald until Wednesday, so I'm not sure where this meeting was advertised, how you are notifying members of the public, since Monday is a holiday and August 2nd will come quickly. How was that advertised, and how, and maybe our clerk can speak to how we can share that information out as well, or the county? How does that handle? And I'll
sure.
let anyone who wants to answer.
I can answer some of those questions. So
thank you, Jen.
My pleasure. Under the Aggregate Resources Act, we have to go through a public and agency consultation process, very similar to that of the Planning Act, except it's proponent driven. So we are required to post on the site signs and similar as in size and information as the one from the county, and it notifies people of the public meeting. We are also required under the Act to send registered letters, mail out to people within 120 meters, landowners within 120 meters of the license limit, but we tend to go right to the property line, same as under the Planning Act, to allow for a little bit more, a larger circulation area there. And we also have to submit all of our information to the various commenting agencies. And we did advertise in the July 20th Dundalk Herald. And so they've recently changed the provincial standards for notification. It used to be a 45-day notification period, but it is now 60 days. So I think we had about 15 days prior to the meeting, and then there's going to be a commenting period where people can send comments to us, which ends on September 19th. So there's a good chunk of time for people to be able to get their comments in.
Thank you. So it's quite an extensive consultation period, as it's been a while since we've had one come before us. Is it within the township and the county's purview to share it out on social media? Lindsay's got her hand up.
Yeah, that's not something we do, Chair Dobrain, since it's proponent driven.
Right.
Becky could correct me, but our past practice is to leave that up to the applicants.
Okay. You've answered all of my questions so far. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Just one quick comment, if I may.
Yeah. Jen, we'll let Jen go, Clinton.
On the notification, we have outlined how to be able to receive additional information and let people know they can contact us by email. And what we have been doing with our more recent gravel and quarry operation applications is sending a link. We do a small internal site, and then we send a link and let people know when it's being updated once we get agency comments in, and we just keep adding information there for people. So anybody who wants that information, they're more than welcome to contact me and I will send it along.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Clinton.
I was also just going to add that the township also has hard copies of the ARA submission that we essentially, as the municipality with the aggregate license in it, we sort of hold on to them for anyone who wants to inquire about them to come into the office to look at them.
Great. Okay. Well, are there any questions or comments from members of council? Well, hearing none, I would conclude that portion of our public meeting complete. Thank you very much, Becky and Jen, for your contributions. Very helpful. Have I missed anything, Lindsay? Holly?
No, we're good to move on to the next file.
All right. The next file.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to just excuse myself now. Sorry, but thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Becky. Take care. Have a great long weekend. All right. So now we move on to file number C-22, Vernon Canor. And the applicant is Vernon and Minerva Canor. The location of the property is concession 4, part lot 2 to 4, geographic township of Proton, civic address 031385 Gray Road 14. The purpose of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is to allow for an on-farm diversified use, being a sewing and quilting machine sales and service shop, and including fabric sales. The owners wish to add the sewing and quilting shop to the list of permitted uses within an agricultural exception zone A1-, and there will be a number assigned. The shop, including office and power room, may be up to 750 meters squared with outside storage of approximately 500 meters squared. There is no outside storage currently proposed. The effect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment would be to change the zone on a portion of the subject lands to permit the sewing and quilting use shop within a new agricultural exception zone A1, and the number assigned. An environmental protection zone boundary may be adjusted based on Conservation Authority comments. May I please have confirmation from the clerk that the proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Yes, Chair Dobreen, proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Lindsay. I will now ask our planner, Clinton Strudwick, to review correspondence received from commenting agencies and the public, if any.
Thank you, Chair Dobreen. So the first comments I have here are from the County of Grey, and they indicate it's recommended that D6 guidelines be achieved for the proposed on-farm diversified use and that MDS be considered. Grey County transportation staff have reviewed the subject application and have noted that a commercial entrance permit is required to accommodate the proposed commercial use. Given the extent of the proposed parking/turning area, which is currently permeable grasslands, municipal staff may wish to consider requesting a drainage plan to ensure that the increased impermeability of the lands will not result in excess drainage onto the county road or surrounding properties. The planting of trees and other landscape elements should also be considered as a site plan stage to increase the aesthetic of the parking area from the road and surrounding properties. Provided the overall use is limited to 8,000 meters squared, the county has no further concerns with the subject application. So that's the county. The historic Saugeen Métis have no objection. The Public Works Department indicate a safe access can be provided. The road standard is it's county jurisdiction, and a road widening is therefore not requested. The Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority find the application acceptable to the SVCA staff. That's all of the agency comments received. Just give me 1 second here. We did receive comments from Janice Kaikkonen, I believe is how you pronounce that. Sorry if I butchered that. Indicating that they would be in attendance and may wish to speak or provide written comments on the proposal.
We are here. Hi, Clinton. We are here. Our concern is only about municipality.
Oh, sorry, just 1 second. We'll get to the Chair Dobreen will call for the public comment section. Just off 1 second, please.
Okie dokie.
You're muted, Barb.
Thank you. Yes, we will get to the public comments shortly. Clinton, is that all of the comments that you've received?
Yes, that is.
Are there any questions or discussion from council at this time? Nope. I will now ask if the applicant or agent is present. Please identify yourself, stating your name for the record. Would you like to make any representation regarding your application?
Yes, Vernon Canor is present, and I currently have no comments.
All right. Well, it's good to know that you're here if we do have any specific questions. Yeah. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in support of this application? Please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a submission in opposition of this application? This is an opportunity for the public to provide your comments. I believe Janice Kaikkonen, you had some comments?
I'm not opposed to the project and I'm not in support of the project either in that sense. So I have a question about the project. You have indicated that it is going to be a commercial building and that the agricultural zoning will be changed to accommodate it. My question is this: with Con and its proposed housing increase and Cedarville being on the other side of it, is there any plans, and this question is for Clinton more than anybody else, is there any plans in the future to expand the boundaries of Cedarville and or Con that would impact the neighbors, the surrounding neighbors, and the zoning overall, make it a bigger municipal area?
So if I'm not mistaken, what you're asking is there any plans for expanding the residential boundaries or the hamlet area?
Yeah, boundaries, increasing the boundaries because of the housing, the proposed housing for Con, and then now we have a commercial building outside of Cedarville. I just want to know if there has been some discussion either at council level or in the planning level that in the future this might lead to an expanding of the boundaries in Cedarville and or Con, and that would impact neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Clinton.
At the present time, there are no plans to expand Cedarville. There's currently some vacant lands within the Cedarville settlement area, is what we call it, that are available for development, but they just haven't been developed yet. So there's no plans to expand that at this time. As for Con has actually been removed as a settlement area, so it would not be expanding within Grey County, maybe on the south side of the road within the adjacent county and municipality, but certainly not within Southgate.
Does that answer your question, Jana?
Yeah, it certainly helps. It's just the commercial aspect of it. And then the other concern we might have is because of what happened before with the drainage. We'd like to be kept updated on the drainage that would be coming out of the property if there's going to be changes made, because the road was, there were issues with the road before, Grade Road 14. So I'm just wondering if we can be kept updated on how that drainage might be changed to prevent that from happening again.
Okay, no decision is being made today, but Clinton is making notes, and I'm sure that he will address those concerns in his staff report when it comes back.
Great, thanks, Clinton.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there, so if there's any questions from council that may have cropped up? I did have just a question of clarity. This is a standard wording that we normally see with regard to an industrial shop, Clinton. It could be manufacturing. I'm familiar with the existing sewing shop and its retail sales. How is this an on-farm diversified use in that it's a home business where perhaps Mr. Knorr can speak to this, but maybe Clinton, I mean, are they manufacturing sewing machines or are they selling sewing machines and therefore it's retail sales and lessons and fabric sales?
Well, sure. If you want to answer that, Vernon, go right ahead.
I can make a comment. The answer to that is there is no manufacturing. It is all retail sales in the commercial building and lessons and so on. Okay, so
you can, that would be a very large store and area, which I'm sure you're looking forward to expanding into. Clinton, can you speak to that, especially given our recent study and discussion about retail sales? Is it affected in any way by this on-farm diversified use, and would it be, is it a different classification?
Okay, so my first comment is just because we're allowing it to be up to that amount doesn't mean it will be.
Right.
But rather than putting it down to the square inch, and then they go 2 inches over and we have to come back for an amendment. We're not doing that. So
No,
we
we're trying to find ways to smooth out the process, correct?
Exactly. So we're saying this is what the bylaw currently permits, and that's what's reflected in it. It's the actual use that we're talking about. So the sewing machine repair and sales, as well as fabric and all the bits and baubles that go along with sewing, and quilting for that matter. As far as whether or not it's on-farm use or not, I posed this question to the county because it's directly in their official plan, and it will be shortly in ours with respect to our new official plan. And they said, yes, it does qualify as a non-farm diversified use.
Okay.
And therefore they would have no concerns, as their comments did reflected that. They just want to make sure that the zoned area maintains that 8,000 square meters or less. So that has to include the parking as well as the building size and all of that, and the septic system and etc. So long as all of that can be squeezed into that 8,000 square meters, then they are satisfied.
Well, thank you very much, and that's exciting. So if there are no further questions or comments from council, that concludes our planning meeting for today, and that is our last file. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
See you, everybody.
Yeah.